Welcome to another episode of eHealth Matters. I'm Ranita Sequeira, the marketing manager at eSurgery, and today we're going to deep dive into the world of probiotics. Our expert guest today is Emma. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, my name's Emma Murray and I'm the pharmacist at eSurgery.
So before we jump in, I've seen many of these products lately, right from yogurts claiming to improve gut health to specialized supplements promising all sorts of benefits. But what's the real story behind this? Is this just another health trend, or is there any science backing all this up? Today, we want you to help us separate this fact from fiction, Emma. So let's get to the fundamentals. What are probiotics? I know they're called good bacteria, but what does this mean?
You're exactly right. Good bacteria is a good way of describing them. Probiotics are something that we are only just really discovering the health benefits that we can get from them. But they are something that is just amazing. And we use that word quite a lot these days. We say amazing, we say awesome. But in terms of probiotics, it's really warranted because they are fundamental to your health. So the World Health Organization definition is they are microorganisms that when taken in adequate amounts confer a health benefit to the host. So basically microorganisms that make you healthy. And what are microorganisms? As you say, bacteria. There are also viruses, fungi, yeasts, sometimes parasites as well. All things that you would normally associate with things that would cause you ill health.
Correct.
But in this particular situation, they really promote your health. There's something that are working within your body to make you a healthier person. And there is lots and lots of research going on about this now, because you may have heard your gut being referred to as the second brain.
Correct.
And basically so many functions are going on in the gut that we just really, we don't even know how much is going on in there. What we know is that it is just vitally important. So probiotics are something that you will get in your food. They're something that you can take in a capsule, which is what or in a powder, and you'll see advertised as well. But both essentially are intending to do the same thing. They're intending to put the good bacteria and microorganisms into your body. And the interesting thing is, when we are in the womb, before we're born, we don't have any bacteria or microorganisms in our guts. That all comes when we start to meet the outside environment and we start to pick them up from outside. So babies that are born with a natural birth rather than a cesarean will automatically be getting bacteria coming in from the vaginal canal. But this is actually a positive thing, not a negative.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound very nice, but it's actually very positive for that baby's gut digestion. And once they reach the outside, they're constantly bombarded with different microorganisms coming in, things that from the milk, especially if they're breastfed, you're getting natural probiotics coming in that way as well. And this all helps to build up what we call our natural gut microbiome, which is very individual. It's as individual as a fingerprint. Your gut microbiome will be completely different to mine. We'll have different species. We'll have different quantities of things. And a lot of that will be down to where we've been brought up, the kind of foods that we've eaten, what we've been exposed to. So it's all very exciting.
So it's definitely good bacteria. That's very important for your body to function overall. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So once we take this probiotics, what happens inside our bodies? How do they actually work?
So it's best really if we start to think about how digestion works and how our bodies work in general. We all know we need to eat food to survive. We know that food's giving us energy, and we know that we talk frequently about eating things with vitamins and minerals and healthy diets. But how do we get that vitamins and minerals into our body? So essentially, we're eating our food, it's travelling down, goes into our stomach, has a swish about into our intestines and then out the other end.
Okay.
The work that's going on in our guts and our intestines is where all of this kind of absorption of vitamins and minerals starts to occur. And underpinning that is again, what we call our gut microbiome. It's the bacteria and the viruses all working super hard in our guts to break down complex carbohydrates, to start to digest fibres. So fibres that we wouldn't be able to actually digest and use, with the bacteria there, we can do. They help to make enzymes that help us to uptake the vitamins, and they help synthesize hormones. So there's huge amounts of work going on in our guts to produce these products that we need to basically run every function in our body. So it's hugely it's exciting, but it also is something that, as we get to understand more and more about, hopefully we will be able to manipulate and use to help to improve our health, and maybe more specifically for certain conditions. A good example is in depression. What we know is that people who suffer with depression tend to have lower levels of serotonin in their brain. So you've probably heard of Prozac. We've got medicines like sertraline. They are antidepressants that work by basically increasing the amount of serotonin that's available in your brain, and with very good results. When we look at the gut, 90% of serotonin that we have in our body is manufactured in the gut. Yeah. So already you can see that there's a linkage there.
Correct.
Theoretically, if you start to increase the amount of food that will be rich in what we call something called tryptophan, which is broken down by your microbiome into serotonin, the potential is there for that to then alleviate some of the symptoms. Now, again, this is not a replacement for antidepressants. If you're on that, you must, keep on that, and you mustn't come off them without speaking to your medical practitioner. However, if you are looking for good mental health and you want something as part of your diet, introducing foods like turkey or eggs, they're high in tryptophan. Your gut can make more serotonin, which theoretically means that there is more serotonin available for those processes that naturally occur in your body. So it's a really interesting and emerging topic, and we're not 100% sure as yet exactly what some of these things mean, but we know things are going on. And I think we've got lots of sayings like feeling it in your gut, or and again, in different cultures, people know that having a healthy gut is a healthy life. And I think that's been long understood. We're just in the UK, where we follow more of a Western diet, we've sort of stepped a little bit away from that. So
that's very informative, because it's so good to know there's so much of work going down, in your gut, and there's so much of that probiotics can help to do. Yeah. So who do you think would benefit from it the most? Like, who do you recommend should take probiotics? Are there some specific groups of people who would benefit more than the others?
That's a really good question. If you're a healthy person and you're having a really healthy diet, lots of green veg and lots of fermented foods, then taking a supplement isn't going to make you necessarily more healthy than you already are. However, what we do know is that in the UK, in the USA, places which follow a predominantly Western style diet with high processed foods, lots of carbohydrates, lots of sugar, the gut health can really suffer when you're following that kind of diet. So there is an argument for taking probiotics if you were living in these kind of areas, and that is the main part of your diet.
Okay, so it's more because diets like burgers and chips and so can you tell me what kind of diet would then have probiotics?
So what you find is in cultures where you're kind of cooking from scratch, if you look towards the East Asia, you will find that there's things like kombucha, there is kimchi, all of these are fermented foods. If you come into Eastern Europe, you've got sauerkraut. And then if you come to kind of more the Mediterranean, you've got lots of soft cheeses, lots of yogurts. All of those are teeming with bacteria, because they've understood for many, many centuries that these kind of foods really optimize your health overall.
So that's good to know that there are good food that obviously will have the gut bacteria and the good bacteria in them.
So you'll notice in the supermarkets, we've got lots more variety now of things like kombucha, sauerkrauts, and all those kind of fermented foods that we've just mentioned. There are two problems that we've got. They're usually in quite small quantities and quite expensive to buy. So they may not be suitable for some people to access on a regular basis. Some of the kombucha that you can buy here tastes wonderful, but it's got large amounts of sugar in, or sweeteners and things, all those types of things that you might want to avoid. So again, in terms of price and availability, it can be quite difficult if you're living in the UK to actually achieve these things. And I'd compare that to like a supermarket in Eastern Europe, where they've got large vats of sauerkraut and you can just help yourself, and it's really, very cheap, and you can incorporate that into your daily diet. Much more difficult to do that in the UK, unless you've got the financial means to buy pots and pots of of the stuff, and you usually will only get one variety. So again, that's where adding in a capsule or a powder or a gummy to try and get those bacteria in can be a convenient and cost-effective source of the microorganisms. The other group of people that can really benefit are people that are travelling. So studies have shown that taking a probiotic about a week before you leave, excuse me, during your stay and for a week after, can shorten the duration of diarrhea that you might have while you're out there, because we know in certain countries, due to the heat, they might have problems with food hygiene, or you might not have access to clean water quite as readily as you would do in the UK. So if you are travelling and you are worried about suffering with a upset stomach, then taking a probiotic before you go and during your stay really is worthwhile and can stop you from having a really nasty attack of diarrhea. The third group of people that can really benefit from probiotics are people that have got chronic problems with their gut. People like IBS sufferers, where they can have constipation or diarrhea, or just certain foods will trigger. Again, with anybody who's suffering changes to their gut health or changes in their bowel movements, they must seek medical attention to rule out any other causes. But once all those things have been ruled out and you've still, got these daily issues or things that are affecting your daily kind of living, really, it is worth trying a probiotic to see if that helps. It won't help immediately, but if you give it a few weeks, it does help to start to get your gut back into the state that you want it. And if there's any damage to your gut, the probiotics will also help with promoting the actual health of the gut itself, as well as underpinning the reactions that are going on in your body.
That's really good to know, Emma, and I could really relate to this because my diet back in India, we have a lot of kanji, which is fermented rice with yogurt, and then we have a lot of dosas and idlis, which is again all fermented, so all good in gut health. But if you trying to get it from the supermarkets in the UK, it's going to be expensive, very expensive, and we don't make it from scratch. So it's a complete different thing. So it's difficult to find. So capsules and supplements can help in this situation.
Definitely. Much more available and easier to find. And actually, interestingly enough, the word itself, probiotic, pro comes from the Latin for, and biotic comes from the Greek for life. So it's for life. And I think that's, all of these cultures have realised that eating these types of food promote your health and prolong your, I think maybe we can't say prolong your life, but they certainly help you lead a healthier existence. So they're definitely something to keep an eye on.
Amazing. Do you think anyone should not take probiotics? Because we've already seen people who should take probiotics, and why should they take it? But are there certain groups of people who should totally avoid it? Are there any risks associated with it?
So they're generally very well tolerated, and most people are absolutely fine. They don't interact with any medication, so you don't have to worry from that point of view. But we would advise caution if you're somebody who's taking any medicines that will affect your immune system. So that's people who've had transplants or have got immune system problems. We would say avoid and make sure you speak to your health provider before you take anything like that. Obviously, if you're somebody who's very seriously unwell as well, or if you've got any complex medical condition, seek medical advice before taking them. But if you are somebody who, for instance, is taking medicines for blood pressure or is generally quite okay, just wants something to make them just optimize their health, then there are generally no problems at all. Most people can take them, but always double check with your healthcare provider, or pop into your local pharmacy, or send an email to an online pharmacy, and most of us will be able to advise you as to whether you can consider them.
Yes, so to all our listeners, if you are unwell, please go get the advice of your a healthcare practitioner or your pharmacist, and let them know what you're going through and ask them if probiotics are recommended, and if not,
The thing with probiotics are they're not a treatment, they're not a replacement for treatment. They're exactly as you said before, they're a supplement. They're there to try and aid and improve what you've already got. They're not a replacement for anything. So Perfect. As long as you remember that, then that's fine.
That's great. So in the UK, where do you recommend, or what do you recommend people should look for getting into food probiotics?
So as we've mentioned, we've got foods like sauerkraut, but the important thing is look for the sauerkraut that's in the fresh section in supermarkets, or you may find if you've got an Eastern European food shop nearby, they may well have different varieties. If you have a look on the packets, it will usually say if there are live microorganisms in them. Tend to avoid the jars of sauerkraut because they're pasteurized, so they tend to not have the probiotics in them. They taste delicious still, but they don't actually, you might not get the advantage that you're trying to achieve. Look for soft cheeses, anything like that. Kefir. It's very popular now on the supermarket shelves, and you get lots of varieties. As we said, have a look at the products to check that they don't contain large amounts of sugar, because you don't want to start consuming to get your probiotics, but then inadvertently take lots of extra calories and things that aren't good for you. So go for the more natural types and then sweeten them up with fresh fruits and things like that. They're the most easy to get hold of in the UK. You can make sauerkraut yourself, but it is a long and protracted business, so I'm not sure I would recommend it. But have a look as well in your local delis. They will often be able to advise you and let you know if they've got live foods. But as we say, look on the packets of things. When you're buying even just your natural yogurts, look for the ones that have got live microorganisms. Most of them will say now if they do, and if they don't have it on the pack, then that means that they've generally been pasteurized to an extent that they're not in there. So it is possible, and it is possible to introduce it by diet alone, but because it is more difficult over here, a capsule will also make sure that you are just getting that quantity that you really want to achieve.
That's very informative, Emma, because I would never know this about sauerkraut, that the ones in jars will not have it. That's really good to know. And obviously, I think for the listeners, please look at the jars and what is written on the packaging. Probably that's going to let you know what it already has, and also look at live microorganisms.
Definitely. And I think the other thing as well, coming on from that, is because we mentioned that we have huge amounts of processed food, and it's often hiding in these jars and things. So if you take a jar of pasta sauce, you'll often find that there's a maize product in there, which is not ideal for your gut health. It's not purely natural. You'll have stabilizers, you'll have preservatives. All of these don't really help when you're talking about trying to improve the amount of microorganisms. But conversely, we also don't have time to necessarily shop fresh or make from fresh. We're all busy, we're all working, got busy lifestyles. So we have to have a balance that we can cope with.
Correct.
Trying to get in fresh fruits and vegetables. So certain vegetables are they're like McDonald's to the microorganisms. They just love them. And you'll know if you've had a meal heavy with leafy greens or a pile of sprouts, we get the after effects. That's because your microorganisms are just loving those vegetables and munching on them. So the general rule is eat fresh when you can. Know that sometimes you can't achieve that, but just start to pick up packets, start to have a look at what's in those ingredients. You'll soon start to spot the ones that you don't recognise. If you don't know what something is, generally you can assume that that's probably a processed food. If it's a kind of chemically sounding name, it's likely that it's a processed item rather than a fresh item. And cooking from scratch when you can. But don't worry too much. Again, this is where taking a probiotic in a capsule is a real help, because you're still going to get goodness without all of that effort of trying to get it into your diet.
That's true. Coming to, I think I've heard about another word called prebiotics. And I would admit that I most often get confused between the two. What is the difference? Are they the same thing or are they different?
So they're not the same thing, but they are two things that complement each other. So the probiotic is the microorganism, which we've been talking about. The prebiotic is basically the food that the microorganism likes to feed on. So something that promotes that microorganism to multiply and grow so that you get more of it. Prebiotics are naturally found, as we were saying, with green leafy vegetables.
Yeah.
We've got things like soybeans, onions as well. These are all very delicious to the bacteria that we've got in our guts. So you can try and increase those. But again, it's quite difficult, especially if you've been used to eating, oven chips, which I am a great fan of. It can be very difficult to suddenly go from that to then, piles of vegetables. It's just not going to happen for a lot of people. So you can buy prebiotics separately as well. You can buy them as something called fructooligosaccharides, which comes as a powder and you can add to your food. You can buy chicory root. So there are lots of different varieties that you can buy and use without taking a probiotic supplement, because they will help to feed the bacteria that you've already got in your gut. However, if you take a probiotic supplement, have a little look. Quite a lot of them will say something like chicory root on the side, or will say contain a prebiotic. So inside the capsules, you've often already got something in there for that bacteria to munch on, so that it can start to get going when it hits your intestines.
That's amazing, because in a capsule you can even get a probiotic and a prebiotic, so people don't have to look for it separately.
Yes, yeah. So it does depend. Have a look at what's in the pack. But if you see that chicory root, or you see a fructooligosacchariide, or you see something where it says an added prebiotic, then you've got a pretty good idea that that's going to be a product that will help to promote that bacteria to proliferate in your guts. Because what you don't want is to take the capsule, they've got nothing to feed on, and they're just, you don't really get any benefit from that. So
so if they don't really have anything to feed on, then
they're not going to multiply. You're not going to get that amount. We'll talk about strength of products in a little bit. Most of them are in billions, but as we said earlier, the amount of bacteria we've got in our gut wants to be in the trillions. So we do need them to kind of multiply and have a nice environment that they can proliferate. So
it's good to have a mix of both prebiotic and probiotic in your system.
That's ideal. Yeah, that is ideal. However, both will work independently as well. So you could choose if you wanted to not take a probiotic, or if you were somebody who falls into one of those categories where a probiotic isn't necessarily recommended, then start looking at making sure you're eating as many prebiotic foods, because those will enhance what you've already got. But if you can take it with a probiotic, fabulous. That's you're kind of giving your gut bacteria the optimum chance.
So if someone has taken antibiotics, would you recommend for them to take a probiotic afterwards? Because there are many claims that say that if you've taken an antibiotic dose, once you finish it, it's better if you take a probiotic.
Yep. So as we said, the antibiotics, they will kill the good bacteria as well as the bad bacteria that's in your body. If you are someone who, when you take antibiotics, you feel a bit unsettled, or you do get diarrhea afterwards, which is quite common, or increased frequency of stools, then it's definitely worth considering taking a probiotic. Again, for various reasons, the medical studies are really, they're patchy, to be fair. But the anecdotal evidence is that can really help. So what I would say is, if you're somebody who suffers, give them a try. If it helps, brilliant. Then you know that actually that is something that you can do in the future every time you have an antibiotic course. And the way that you normally take them is, at the start of the antibiotics, you start the probiotic at the same time, and then you continue for a week afterwards as well. There is no doubt that good gut bacteria helps you. Where the studies are is they haven't been able to show that the capsules necessarily confer much of an advantage over the foods. However, if you can't eat the foods, then the capsules or the powders are going to be the next best way to go. And they give you really the largest amount, a bigger quantity really of probiotic going into your system. If you are a healthy person and you tolerate antibiotics well, again, there's no harm in taking them, and you may find that there is a benefit, but you wouldn't necessarily, it's not a necessity. It's not something that you have to take, but it is something that you can really try to just make sure that that you don't suffer any unnecessary side effects, really.
That's good to know, Emma, because that they can take the antibiotics and the probiotics together Yeah, but we would always recommend to check with your healthcare practitioner about this.
Definitely. And the other thing just to add in is you need to make sure that you're taking the right kind of strains for that, because the antibiotic will also kill probiotics, but there are certain strains that are resistant to that are resistant to that. So have a look if you're using them for that. Speak to your pharmacist or speak to your healthcare provider to find out which one is the most recommended for taking with antibiotics. And we'll talk a little bit more about that
amazing.
in a bit.
What are the side effects of probiotics? Are there any side effects, or are they all good?
So the amazing thing with probiotics is they are not absorbed as such into your body. If you're a normal person, you've got a normal acting gut, they won't be absorbed into your bloodstream, because we don't want bacteria to get into there. That causes all sorts of problems. So you don't get those kind of what we would call systemic side effects that you might get from a medicine. However, they are increasing your digestion. So the kind of effects you would get are those that you would associate with an increased digestive process, which will be the usual bloating, possibly feeling a bit nauseous. But if you take them with food, that's offset quite a bit, and you most people find that they're very well tolerated. Increased wind can also be a factor, so not before a romantic date. It's that's not the time to start them. But other than that, the side effects are usually quite short-lived. So persevere. Most of the side effects you experience, it means that they're doing their job. They're doing what they're supposed to do. So they're actually a good thing. But obviously, you have to make sure that you are that you can tolerate them as well. But if you can persevere through that, if you are somebody that suffers, usually after about a week to 2 weeks, your system will have started to even out. It's all about getting the balance in there. And once you've achieved that balance, then the side effects should be very minimal.
Okay, so the side effects are basically the metrics to know if they're working or not working.
They give you a good idea. Yeah, they give you a good idea. And sometimes it can take a few days before so if you don't get any side effects, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not working. But when you do get them, you know that is down to the bacteria doing its job. Sometimes if you've had a chronic condition for a long time, it can take a little while for taking them before you start seeing this increase in maybe gas being produced or anything like that. So it all depends on your individual circumstance, but it's worth persevering and seeing if they give you a benefit. Usually if you're suffering from a chronic condition, I would say give it at least 4 to 6 weeks before you make any judgment, and you should hopefully start after that period of time to either feel a little bit better or notice some improvement in your symptoms.
Okay, that's good to know. Can they move from, if one is not working for them after 4 to 6 weeks, then can they move to another one? Yeah.
So as we were talking about, there are different strains in different prebiotic preparations, and we've also got different qualities and different amounts. So there is a certain amount of trial and error. And again, we'll talk about how best to pick the product and what to start with. But certainly there is a argument for if one doesn't work, have a look at what strains that has got in it and look for something that's maybe got a different strain, or look at the quantity of bacteria that's in there and maybe choose a product with a higher amount. Have a word as well to your healthcare practitioner or to your pharmacist, because they will be able to help advise what the most appropriate product is to try, because it may be that you're trying a product that is not right for the condition that you're trying to treat. So to our audience, always check with your healthcare practitioner before choosing any kind of supplement or probiotic. Very important,
Coming to our next question, and this is a big one, and most of our audience would like to know this. Does probiotic help lose weight?
Well, this is $1 million question. And there is a lot of research going on into this. So the honest answer is, if you are overweight and you take a probiotic and you make no other change to your lifestyle, chances are you're not going to lose any weight that way. Okay. So they're not a treatment as such. But what we do know is if you take a group of people who are overweight and you take a group of people who are underweight, there are some significant differences within the gut microbiome between those two categories of people, which can be down to lots of things. What we know is weight is a very complex it's a complex situation. It's not as simple as having a calorie deficit for many people. Correct. Of course, you have to eat you have to eat less calories than you're going to be using in order to lose weight, but it's not a linear equation. You have to, there are factors like metabolism, your hormones, and again, this is where your gut health really does start to potentially play a part in that, because if they're synthesizing, you want to make sure that the right hormones are being made in the right amounts. Your body will do a lot of this naturally, but it's just making sure that those digestive processes, which underpin all of the other systems in your body, are being optimized. So the probiotic itself doesn't help you to lose weight, but there is a definite argument that as part of a healthy lifestyle, taking a probiotic to make sure that all the systems in your body are functioning at an optimum level, which in turn may have an effect on your weight, it's really worth considering, I would say. And what we would also find is that, not in all cases, but in some cases, people who are overweight, they may have had a higher processed diet. It might be that there's, this is a huge generalization, but people eating, again, fried foods, pizzas, convenience foods, may be the root cause of the weight. If you've had many years of diets like that, your gut health is not going to be good. So again, there is a real argument for, if you are falling into that category and you're thinking, right, I really want to sort myself out, I really want to lose weight, I'm going to start eating a healthy diet, then as part of that, consider a probiotic, consider taking it so that you can get as much nutritional benefit from that new diet that you're choosing to follow.
So, well, there's definitely not a direct link to weight loss, but obviously it will optimize your weight loss journey.
Definitely. And I think that's very similar so we've all heard about the Ozempic and people taking injections now to help weight loss, which are proving to be very effective. But what we find is if people don't change their diet, then they aren't going to keep that weight off when they stop using the injection.
Correct.
So again, as part of that, getting your gut right, I think there's a real kind of theoretical argument for the fact that you could take a probiotic while you're on the injections, because you're helping to get your gut maximized for the point when you actually eventually come off that injection. That's a personal recommendation, not a scientific recommendation, but
if you're taking any other medications in your daily life, please check with your healthcare practitioner if you're okay to take a probiotic and choose it accordingly. Finally, with so many products in the market, I'm sure everyone finds it overwhelming to choose. There are so many things on social media. How is someone supposed to go online or go to their local pharmacy store and, choose the supplements there?
You're absolutely right. It is a minefield, and there's so many products, there's so many claims, and anybody who's scrolled through on social media will see something that you think, crikey, that sounds so good. I've got to buy it because it's just definitely going to sort me out. And we're all subject to that. And it's marketing is very powerful. The interesting thing with probiotics is they are not classed as medicines, they're classed as foodstuffs.
Correct.
So that means they are not controlled in the same way as medications would be controlled. So it is quite important that you make sure you choose a manufacturer that is following a good standard and what we call good manufacturing process, if you can. Because that means what they say they are putting into that capsule and what that capsule has in it has had tests on it to show that that's what's in it. Because they're a foodstuff, they don't have to have the testing done as being able to sell this, because there's nothing unsafe about it. It's just that you might be spending an awful lot of money and really not be getting what you want from your capsule or from your tablet or your powder, whatever product you've chosen. So have a little look into the actual manufacturer when you're looking at a product. Have a look at what claims they make. Have a look what they say about their processes and how they make that product, because that will all be very important in the end quality. The other thing is to make sure that you buy it from a appropriate retailer. You want to make sure that they are coming from sources, so that the product you're getting is of reasonable quality and what you're paying your money for. Supermarkets sell them. They tend to not sell the higher strength products, but you will find them. And in general, supermarkets will be very careful with what they put on their shelves. So you're getting a safe product, and you'll pretty much know that product has got a reasonable amount of what they say they've got in it. For the more specialist products, you're probably looking at health food stores or pharmacies, and most pharmacies will carry a range of probiotics now. purely because of the things that we've been talking about, like that you may recommend them to people who are on antibiotics and areas like that. So have a little look. When you're buying online from a pharmacy, have a little look for, I've just got a picture of this green cross. And this is the one that appears on the e-surgery website.
Yes.
This shows that you are a UK pharmacy. And if you click on that link, it will take you to the regulators page. So look for that green cross, click on it, check it goes to the regulator. You don't need to look any further than that as such, but that means it is a pharmacy operating in the UK. And in the UK, we have standards that have to be adhered to when you're getting your stock. You basically have to buy from a provider that's a road. You're not buying it from somebody's the back of somebody's car or the boot of somebody's car. It should be coming from a main, like from a proper wholesaler or distributor. So that's a good safety way of making sure that you're going to somewhere with legitimate products. So that's the first thing. Check your manufacturer, check the place that you're buying them from, and just use a little bit of maybe common sense as well.
Yeah.
And again, if things sound too good to be true, have in your mind they may be too good to be true as well. The second thing that you can look at is the strength. So they're normally expressed in terms of billions of the microorganism that's in there, and the products will range usually from around 1 billion up to about 25 billion or even more in some cases. Good standard product is going to be anywhere from the 5 to 10 billion. That's going to give you quite a lot. Some of the products which have got 1 million in can be taken a little bit more frequently. Everything is going to put something in, and you just have to look at what you can tolerate, and it is a little bit of trial and error. Again, they're not medicines, and it's not necessarily that if you take the higher strength product. So, for example, if you've got one that's 20 billion bacteria and another one that's 10 billion, it may not be twice as effective. Sure. But if you've got a condition that you want to treat, you might want to go for the higher strength. There is a little bit of trial and error, but what I would say is that quality is more important than the actual quantity of bacteria that's in your product. The next bit to look at is the actual strains that are in there. You want to look for something that's got a lactobacillus or a I have to just say it, I can't say it. You're going to have to look at one of the Bifidobacterium bifidum. I just cannot get that word. Those are two strains that have had trials done in them that we know are effective. Saccharomyces boulardii, that's actually a yeast rather than a bacteria. Trials have shown that can be very effective in conditions where diarrhea is a problem. It's not affected by antibiotics either. So again, that can be used for antibiotic-induced diarrhea. Or as the side effects, because the antibiotic will not kill the yeast, it only kills bacteria. In general, don't worry too much. Start with a product, make sure it's a good quality product. Look at a price point that you can afford, because that's the other thing. There is a huge range of prices. Now, if something is maybe 99p, you're going to really have questions over the quality of that product, purely because if they're doing the testing and they are working to good manufacturing standards, there is a cost associated with that. Others at the other end of the market, you can go up to over £100. Quite a lot sit at around the £40-50 mark. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. So if you can afford it, fabulous if you've got that amount of disposable income. But if you don't worry if you're getting a product that's a slightly lower strength with slightly less strains in it. It will still help you. It will still be of benefit. So the main thing is find something that works at the price point that's going to work for you, for your personal situation. And if you're buying from a reputable supplier, you're going to get some goodness. And then you can experiment about, you can try and see when something's on special offer, give it a try, see if it works better for you. There's no right or wrong. I would say try not to get overwhelmed with the choice
that's available.
Just
get
started. Or go to your pharmacy or look at your online pharmacy, have a look what they've got in their section and pick a product.
Correct. So just to summarize this for the audience, your supermarkets will be having some probiotics. You can go to your local pharmacies. If you're going online, we have so many things on social media nowadays. If you're going online, please look for the GPHC logo, and that will show if the pharmacy is regulated or no. And then obviously choose a price point which is okay for you, and then at least start with the medication. If you want to know if the medication works for you, give it 4 to 6 weeks to know if the side effects are there or not there, and then take a call.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start. And then as you get more familiar with the products that are available, you can then have a look at other places, you can try things. You're unlikely to to buy something that's going to do you any harm. But if you do buy off the internet, you never quite know what you're getting unless you go to an established retailer. So I think you're absolutely right there.
So are there any products you recommend in terms of probiotics?
So I've brought some products with me today. We've talked about how you can pick a probiotic in terms of looking at the strengths and the different strains that are in there. The products that I've brought here today just give you an example of how you can look at what's on the shelves. Yeah. So we've got a company which works to a good manufacturing practice. They're actually a pharmaceutical company. So they do plenty of tests and things to check that what they are putting in that capsule is actually what ends up in that capsule when it reaches you. We've got this one here, which is Biome Balance 25. The 25 means it's got 25 billion live bacteria per capsule, so it's quite high. And the strains that it's got in there, it's got a Lactobacillus rhamnosus, Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus plantarum, and a Bifidobacterium. It's pretty much a really good all-rounder. It would be a good one to start with if you've got a chronic condition. Also is fine if you're taking antibiotics as well, but it's a slightly higher price point than some of the others, so you may not want to spend that amount straight away. But if you do suffer with a chronic condition or you're looking at repairing your gut, starting with that for 6 to 8 weeks and then maybe moving on to the other strength, perfectly reasonable way of going about things. Acidophilus Extra 10, this is the one that we actually recommend alongside antibiotics for the people that wouldn't normally be taking a probiotic but specifically want to take it with their antibiotics, or if they want to go, we also recommend it for travellers as well. Very good for that. The 2 strains that are in here are resistant to antibiotics killing them, so they should theoretically, a good proportion of them should survive. 10 million is a good strength as well, so it's a really good all-rounder, this one as well. So again, if you've got a chronic condition, maybe start with the high one and then for a maintenance dose move on to the lower one. But if you can't afford that one, go for the more middle priced one. We've got here Saccharomyces boulardii, which I think, as we were saying, is a yeast rather than a bacteria. This is why you can buy this one separately, because there is quite a lot of evidence coming out as to how effective that is in conditions that are related to diarrhea. Again, is fine with antibiotics and would be fine for travelling as well. So again, we've got 3 products here which all basically do the same thing. It comes down to personal preference, it comes down to price, and a little bit of trial and error. But we can say that about many things. I would say, often you may start a medicine, it doesn't suit you, so you go on to a different one. So those 2. And then I've brought in these gummies as well, which have got, so this one has got 1 billion live bacteria, and I believe has got some probiotic in it as well. Yeah, it's got fibre-based chicory in there, so that's a nice one. And then we've got the Biome Balance, which again is 1 billion. So slightly lower amount of probiotics, to get the right word. Don't worry about that. What you want is a product you're going to take. Sometimes when you get up in the morning, I don't know about yourself, but you just can't always face taking tablets.
Correct.
I keep the gummies on my desk or in my car. I don't want your car to get too hot, but that aside, they're normally eaten very quickly. They're a delicious way of taking a probiotic. They do usually retail gummies you'll find are more expensive, and that's the same for whether they're vitamins or probiotics. They're a reasonable price, but they are delicious. They are delicious. So I suppose the only caution I would say is don't leave them around and about your house, because other members of the family will eat them and they will be gone. But they can be used as a nice supplement, and as an easy way of taking them, something that you don't have to think about. You just eat them like a sweet, although it is only 1 or 2 a day on these ones. So different things for different people. You will see certain places will offer powders as well. Powders are great. The only problem with powders is portability, I would say. They usually have to be kept in the fridge as well, so and you have to sprinkle them on something. You don't want to have a spoonful of powder, but again, it's personal preference. Pick a product that's going to be easy for you to take, because then you're more likely to take it rather than it going out of date and sitting at the back of your cupboard.
Yeah, so pick a product that you're going to continue taking. Again, this is a lifestyle choice. So something that is sustainable, choose that. And I would relate to this because I don't think I'm going to wake up in the morning and look for a tablet. I would really like a gummy as well. And if I don't take the tablet in the morning, I'm not going to remember throughout the day to take it. Yeah, so a gummy would be a good option as well. Also, as Emma was showing, always look at the product information here, and then the product information will be written here. So please have a look at the manufacturer, the product information, what is in the product, and the strengths as well.
Definitely. And I think the other thing to mention is that most products are suitable for a gluten-free diet. So that's great. But again, check the packaging. They will normally say a lot of products are suitable for vegetarians because they use a non-animal based gelatin these days in capsules. But again, check the product. Normally on the packaging, you will be able to find quite clearly whether they're suitable for a vegetarian or a gluten-free diet. You may find very small amounts of lactose in. For people who are lactose intolerant or a lactose-free diet, the general advice is the amount of lactose that comes in any tablet is so small that it wouldn't actually cause a problem to the condition. So they're not normally marketed as lactose-free or anything like that because there's not enough in there. However, if you particularly want to avoid that, then going for something like a gummy, I believe that would be lactose free because it's something that's gone in to help create the tablet. So generally finding gummies, they would be lactose.
So that's good. There's a lot of option and it covers a lot of diets. So everyone is covered in the entire
There's
range.
a product out there for everyone. Definitely. You just might need a little bit of advice to find which is the most suitable for you. But thinking about what fits in with your personal lifestyle is the best way of going about it.
Perfect. That's great. Our final question, Emma, is, do you take probiotics?
I do. Interestingly enough, it was I started taking probiotics when I had a period of ill health, which was quite significant. I wasn't really being diagnosed with anything. We knew that it wasn't any nasty, there was no cancers or anything like that. And my main symptom was not so much gastrointestinal symptoms, although I did have some. It was more fatigue. And I don't know about yourself, but if you've ever suffered with fatigue, it's not like tiredness. It's not like a tiredness when you've been out for a heavy night on the town and then you're kind of like struggling through the next day. We've all been there. This is a different type of tiredness. It's one that just seeps into everything. And it's kind of what I would describe walking through life through mud, really. It's like, you can do everything, but everything is an effort. And when that's every single day, that can really start to bring you down. And at certain periods in their life, women will often feel that for hormonal reasons as well. So lots of underlying causes. Again, anybody who's experiencing these things and hasn't had it checked out, you must get checked out first. But if you've excluded other diagnoses, start to have a look at your diet. And I would really recommend people look at increasing the amount of vegetables and the general healthy advice that we would say. But then on top of that, start to incorporate some of those fermented foods in that we're talking about and consider taking a probiotic. For me, that was, I can eat a little bit of sauerkraut, but I do struggle with it. I don't mind it if it's cooked, but then that kind of defeats the object as well because you're killing all of the bacteria. So for me, taking a capsule was a really good choice for trying to get that bacteria back in. And I started with a higher strength one to try and theoretically repair the gut. All I know is that from taking that and addressing my diet, I'm feeling better in my late 40s than I was perhaps in my early 30s. So, again, that's just personal experience. It may not work for everyone, but if you've come to the end of the road, I think that this is where supplements really do play a part. If you have excluded all of the medical causes, but you have got chronic conditions that you just can't get on top of, start to look at your diet because it is phenomenal the effect that is having really in people. And as part of that, the probiotics, I think, are a very sensible thing to consider.
Well, that's a good personal experience right there. Thank you so much for joining us today, Emma.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.